Hey there, and welcome to Epic Truth Stories, the channel where drama sizzles and revenge burns hotter than ever. If you love jaw-dropping twists, bold characters, and stories that keep you guessing until the end, you're in the right place. Subscribe and dive into gripping tales of betrayal, karma, and ultimate payback. Get ready for unforgettable moments and satisfying endings, only on Epic Truth Stories. Hit the subscribe button, and let the drama begin. Jesse's funeral was supposed to be closure. Instead, it felt like the opening of something darker. I drove my pickup through the fog-choked streets of Millfield, Michigan, 3 days of oil rig grease still under my fingernails. The lake town looked smaller each time I came home, like it was shrinking in on itself. Jesse Hartwell had been my best friend since we were 12, and now he was dead at 36, drowned in Lake Superior, they said. Jesse, who could swim before he could ride a bike. The story didn't sit right, but grief makes you question everything. My house sat at the end of Birch Street, a 2-story colonial with a detached guest house I'd built for Karen's parents to visit. They never did. The driveway was empty except for Karen's Honda, but something felt wrong the moment I killed the engine. The house looked the same, but it felt different, like someone had rearranged the furniture of my life while I was gone. I grabbed my duffel bag and headed for the front door. The keys stuck in the lock, which was odd. Karen always kept it oiled. "Karen," I called, stepping into the entry hall. "In the kitchen," her voice came back, but it sounded strained. I found her washing dishes that were already clean, her auburn hair pulled back in a messy bun. She was wearing her good jeans and a sweater I'd never seen before. When she turned to face me, her eyes were red-rimmed. "How was the funeral?" she asked, drying her hands on a dish towel. "Sad." Jesse's mom couldn't stop crying. I set my bag down and studied her face. "You okay? You look tired." "I've been helping Eli Bancroft. You remember Jesse's neighbor? His wife died last month, and he's been struggling with the arrangements." I knew Eli, the architect who'd moved to town about 2 years ago with his wife, Sarah. She'd been fighting cancer. I'd heard she passed while I was on the rig. "That's nice of you," I said, though something in her tone made my skin crawl. "He's been staying in the guest house, just temporarily. He couldn't bear being alone in that big house with all the memories." The words hit me like a cold wave. "You invited him to stay here without asking me? You were at the funeral. He needed help, and it's what neighbors do." Her voice had that edge it got when she was defending something indefensible. Through the kitchen window, I could see the guest house. A light was on in the bedroom window. As I watched, a shadow passed by the curtain. Male. Tall. "How long has he been here?" 3 days, since you left for the funeral." 3 days. The exact amount of time I'd been gone. I walked to the back door and looked out at the small building I'd constructed with my own hands. "I'm going to introduce myself." "He's probably asleep," Karen said quickly. "He's been taking medication for the grief. Maybe tomorrow." But as she spoke, I heard footsteps on the gravel path outside. Heavy boots on stone. The footsteps of a man who wasn't sleeping. I went to the master bedroom to unpack, trying to shake the uneasy feeling crawling up my spine. Karen followed, chattering about the funeral arrangements for Sarah, the casseroles from neighbors, Eli's architectural firm struggling without him. I opened the closet to hang up my funeral suit, and that's when I saw them, men's dress shoes. Italian leather. Size 11. Not mine. I stared at them for a long moment, my blood turning to ice water. They were sitting next to Karen's heels, like they belonged there, like they'd been there for more than 3 days. "Karen," I said, my voice steady as concrete. "Whose shoes are these?" She looked over my shoulder, and her face went pale. "Oh, Eli's. He was here earlier and it was muddy outside. I told him to leave them in the closet so he wouldn't track dirt through the house." The lie came so smoothly, so practiced, that I knew it wasn't the first one. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I lay in bed listening to Karen breathe beside me, cataloging every sound from outside. Around midnight, I heard the guesthouse door open and close, footsteps on gravel, then silence. At dawn, I walked the property with my coffee, inspecting everything like I was back on the rig, checking for leaks. The shed behind the house had always been my sanctuary. Power tools, fishing gear, the equipment I used for side jobs when I was on shore. I kept it locked with a heavy-duty padlock. The lock was still there, but something was wrong. The metal showed fresh scratches around the keyhole. Someone had been inside. I opened it up and immediately knew. My tools had been moved. Not obviously, but I knew the arrangement of every wrench, every drill bit. Someone had been in here, looking for something or using something. I checked my key ring. The shed key was missing. "Morning, Nolan." I spun around. Eli Bancroft stood 10 feet away, holding a coffee mug that looked suspiciously like one from my kitchen. He was tall and lean, with a kind of weathered handsomeness that came from outdoor work despite his white-collar profession. Gray streaked his brown hair, and his blue eyes had the hollow look of recent grief. "Eli, sorry for your loss." "Thank you. And I'm sorry about Jesse. I know you two were close." We stood there in the morning mist, two men who should have been allies in grief, but felt more like predators sizing each other up. "Karen says you're staying in the guest house." "Just until I can get my head straight. Your wife is a saint, offering to help like that." His smile never reached his eyes. "I hope you don't mind. I know it's an imposition." "Not at all. That's what neighbors do. But I was thinking about my missing key, about his shoes in my closet, about the way Karen had lied so smoothly." After Eli went back to the guest house, I drove into town for supplies. I needed answers, and I knew where to start. Sheriff Tom Bradley had been keeping the peace in Millfield for 20 years. We'd gone to high school together, and he was one of the few people who knew Jesse as well as I did. I found him at Murphy's Diner, working through a stack of pancakes and a case file. "Nolan, how you holding up?" "Been better. Mind if I ask about Jesse's accident?" Tom's fork paused halfway to his mouth. "What about it?" "Just seems strange. Jesse was a strong swimmer. Strong swimmers drown too. Happens more than you'd think. Guy gets overconfident. Maybe he has a few beers. Water's cold this time of year." But Tom's eyes said something different. "Why? You hear something?" "Not exactly. Just doesn't feel right." Tom leaned back in the booth, studying me. "Between you and me, there were a few things that didn't add up. Jesse's car was found at the North Dock, but his body washed up 2 miles south. Current doesn't run that way this time of year." "You investigate it?" "Looked into it. Jesse had been acting strange the week before he died. Agitated. Asked his neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, if she'd seen anyone around his house. He said he felt like he was being watched." My coffee suddenly tasted like acid. "Anyone else know about this?" "Just me and the coroner. And now you." Tom closed the case file. "Why the sudden interest?" I told him about Eli staying at my place, about this strange feeling I couldn't shake. I didn't mention the shoes or the missing key. "Not yet." "Eli Braftoft," Tom frowned. "He was one of the last people to see Jesse alive. They had coffee the day before Jesse died. Said Jesse seemed upset about something. The diner suddenly felt too small, too warm." "What kind of upset?" "Relationship troubles. According to Eli, Jesse was worried about someone he cared about making bad decisions." I left the diner with more questions than answers. But one thing was becoming clear. Jesse's death and Eli's presence in my life weren't coincidences. That evening, I watched from the kitchen window as Karen walked out to the guest house with a covered plate. She knocked, and when Eli opened the door, she stepped inside. The door closed behind them. They were in there for 43 minutes. When Karen came back, her hair was mussed and her cheeks were flushed. She set the empty plate in the sink without looking at me. "How's Eli doing?" I asked. "Better. He's a strong man. He'll get through this." Later that night, I stood at our bedroom window and watched the guest house. Around 11, I saw two silhouettes pass by the window, close together. Too close for grief counseling. Then I saw something that made my blood freeze. Through the window, clear as day, I watched my wife embrace another man. Not the quick hug of comfort, but the long, desperate embrace of lovers. I went to bed that night knowing my marriage was over. The only question was what I was going to do about it. 3 weeks on the rig gave me time to think, and thinking was dangerous. I worked my shifts in the North Atlantic, wrestling with pipe fittings and hydraulic systems, but my mind was back in Millfield, imagining what was happening in my house. The rig crew noticed my mood. Big Jim, my supervisor, pulled me aside on day 15. "You're wound tighter than a drum, Faye. What's eating you?" "Personal stuff. The kind that gets people hurt out here. You want to talk about it, or you want to go home early?" I worked the full 3 weeks, but I made plans, detailed plans. When I finally drove back into Millfield, the guest house looked more settled, like someone had been living there instead of just staying there. Eli's Subaru was parked next to it like it belonged. Karen met me at the door with a smile that looked rehearsed. "How was the trip?" "Long, rough seas." I set my bag down and looked around. The house felt different again. More pictures on the mantel, different soap in the bathroom, little changes that spoke of another person's influence. "Eli's still here," she said. "He's been having a really hard time. Dr. Matthews put him on antidepressants, and they make him dizzy. I didn't feel right leaving him alone." "Dr. Matthews?" "The same doctor who'd treated Sarah Braftoft during her cancer fight. The same doctor who'd signed Jessie's death certificate." "That's thoughtful," I said, but I was studying Karen's face, looking for tells. Her left eye twitched when she lied. It had been twitching since I walked in the door. That evening, Eli came over for dinner. Karen had made pot roast, my favorite, but she'd also opened a bottle of wine. Karen didn't drink wine. "Nolan, I can't thank you enough for letting me stay," Eli said, cutting his meat with precise, architectural movements. "I know it's an imposition." "Not at all. Community spirit." We made small talk about the weather, the rig work, his architectural projects. All very civilized. All very fake. "I should probably start looking for my own place soon," Eli said. "I can't impose on your hospitality forever." "No rush," Karen said quickly. "You're welcome to stay as long as you need." I watched this exchange and filed it away. Karen wanted him to stay. Eli was making noises about leaving, but not making any actual moves to leave. Classic manipulation dynamics. After dinner, I excused myself to unpack. In the bedroom, I went straight to the closet. Eli's shoes were gone, but there were indentations in the carpet where they'd sat. In their place was a pair of women's heels I'd never seen before, expensive ones. I picked up one of the shoes and examined it. Size 7. Karen wore size 8. Behind the guest bed pillow, I found a black lace bra, Victoria's Secret, 34C. Karen was a 36B and hadn't worn black lace since our honeymoon. The next morning, I was replacing a board on the back deck when 8-year-old Katie Morrison from next door rode her bike into my yard. "Hi, Mr. Fay. Welcome home." "Thanks, Katie. How's school?" "Good. My mom said I shouldn't tell you this, but I think you should know." I set down my hammer. "Tell me. Your wife cries a lot in his arms when you're gone. The man in the little house. I see them from my bedroom window. She goes over there every night, and sometimes she doesn't come back until morning." Children, I'd learned, were the most reliable witnesses. They had no reason to lie and no social filters to soften the truth. "How often does this happen, Katie?" "Every night since you left. Sometimes during the day, too. My mom says it's none of our business, but I thought you should know because crying means someone's hurt, and maybe you could help." I gave Katie a $5 bill and told her she was a good neighbor. Then I went inside and began planning. 20 years working oil rigs teaches you a few things about surveillance. Equipment needs to be weatherproof, tamper-resistant, and invisible. Lucky for me, I had access to the best surveillance gear money could buy, courtesy of offshore security protocols. I drove to Grand Rapids and spent $2,000 at an electronics store that catered to private investigators. Micro cameras that looked like electrical outlets, audio devices smaller than hearing aid batteries, a Wi-Fi network scanner that could tap into any device connected to my home internet. Back home, I waited for the right moment. It came when Karen announced she was taking Eli grocery shopping because he was still too grief-stricken to go alone. I had 2 hours. The first camera went inside a fake electrical outlet in the guesthouse living room, the second inside a modified smoke detector in the bedroom. Audio devices went under the bed frame and behind the nightstand. Each device was motion-activated and transmitted directly to a receiver I installed in the shed. The house got the same treatment: camera in the kitchen clock, audio device in the bedroom lamp, a network tap on the Wi-Fi router that would capture every text, email, and web search. My hands were steady as a surgeon's as I worked. This was just another technical problem to solve, like fixing a blown gasket or replacing a damaged valve. Emotion was a luxury I couldn't afford. The hardest part was the timing. I had to install everything, test the connections, and clean up any evidence before they returned. With 15 minutes to spare, I was back in the shed watching the feeds on a laptop screen. They came home laughing about something. Eli carried the grocery bags like he lived there. Karen touched his arm as they talked, her fingers lingering longer than necessary. That night, I lay in bed listening to the audio feed through an earpiece. At 11:30, I heard Karen get up. The bedroom door opened and closed. Footsteps down the hall, out the back door, across the gravel to the guest house. Through the cameras, I watched my wife knock softly on Eli's door. He opened it wearing just a pair of boxers. She was in her nightgown, the one she used to wear for me. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. She stepped inside, and he closed the door behind her. For the next hour, I listened to the sounds of my marriage ending, every whispered word of affection, every moan of pleasure, every promise they made to each other about a future that didn't include me. But it was what they said afterward that changed everything. "I feel terrible about this," Karen whispered. "Don't. He doesn't deserve you." "I know, but still. He's a good man. Good men finish last, baby. You know that." A long pause. Then Karen's voice, softer now. "Do you think Jesse suspected?" "Jesse suspected everything. That was his problem. God, Eli, when I think about what could have happened if he didn't. That's what matters. Jesse's dead, and we're alive. And now we can be together." My blood turned to ice water. Jesse knew about the affair. And somehow, Jesse's knowledge had gotten him killed. Sometimes I wonder if we made the right choice. Karen said the right choice was getting rid of the problem. Jesse was going to ruin everything. "You said so yourself." "I said he was going to tell Nolan. I never said we should." "You didn't have to say it. I saw it in your eyes. Jesse had to go, and now he's gone. End of story." I lay in my bed listening to my wife and her lover discuss my best friend's murder, and I realized that revenge wasn't just something I wanted anymore. It was something I needed. Jesse's phone records told a story the police had missed. 3 days before his death, he'd made 17 calls to various numbers in town. The mayor's office, the local newspaper, me. I'd been on the rig and missed his calls. The voicemails were gone from my phone, but Verizon kept records. It took a week, and a friendly technician who owed me a favor, but I got copies of Jesse's final messages. His voice sounded different. Scared. "Nolan, it's Jesse. I need to talk to you about something important. It's about Karen and that architect guy. I've got proof of something that's going to blow up your world, but you need to hear it from me first. Call me back." The second message was more urgent. "Nolan, where are you? I'm in deep crap here. I've got video evidence of something that's going to destroy some people, but I think they know I have it. If something happens to me, check my safety deposit box at First National. Keys hidden in my tackle box." The third message was barely a whisper. "They're here. If you get this, Remember what I said about the box. The truth is in there. Don't trust anyone." That was the last message Jesse ever left. I drove to Jesse's house the next morning. It was locked up tight, with a for sale sign in the front yard. Eli Bancroft's architectural firm was listed as the selling agent. The spare key was still under the fake rock by the back door. Jesse's place looked like it had been cleaned out quickly, too quickly. Personal items were gone, but the furniture remained. Someone had been looking for something. The tackle box was in the basement, right where Jesse always kept it. Inside, beneath the lures and sinkers, I found a small brass key and a note written in Jesse's handwriting. Box 247. If you're reading this, they got to me first. Don't let them get away with it. First National Bank still had Jesse's safety deposit box under a probate hold, but I knew the manager, Carol Hendress. She'd been 2 years ahead of us in high school and remembered Jesse fondly. "I probably shouldn't be doing this," she said, leading me to the vault. "But Jesse specifically listed you as someone who could access the box if something happened to him." The box contained 3 items: a USB drive, a manila envelope, and a DVD marked insurance in Jesse's handwriting. The DVD was shaky cell phone footage, but the audio was clear, Jesse's voice narrating as he filmed through someone's window. "This is Jesse Hartwell, October 15th. I'm documenting what I've been seeing at the Bancroft house." The video showed Karen's Honda parked in Eli's driveway. Then it showed Karen leaving Eli's house at dawn, adjusting her clothes and looking around nervously before getting in her car. "This has been going on for weeks," Jesse's narration continued. "Every time Nolan's on the rig, she's over here. Today, I'm going to confront them." The video jumped to later that same day. Jesse standing on Eli's front porch, knocking on the door. When Eli answered, Jesse held up his phone. "I've got it all on video. Everything. You want to explain to me why you're destroying my friend's marriage?" "Jesse, you don't understand. I understand plenty. Question is, what are you going to do about it?" The video ended there, but the envelope contained printed screenshots from the footage, along with phone records showing dozens of calls between Karen and Eli going back months, long before Sarah Bruft's death. The USB drive was even more damning. It contained Jesse's research into Eli's background. Eli Bancroft wasn't just a widowed architect grieving his wife. He was a serial adulterer who'd been divorced twice before marrying Sarah. Each divorce had involved allegations of emotional manipulation and financial fraud. But it was the final document that made my hands shake, a medical examiner's report from Eli's first wife's death. She had drowned in Minnesota, just like Sarah, just like Jesse. 3 people close to Eli Bancroft had drowned under suspicious circumstances. The pattern was clear, but proving it would be impossible. Eli was too smart to leave obvious evidence. But he wasn't smart enough to realize I'd learned surveillance from the best security teams in the world. That night, with fresh audio evidence of Eli and Karen planning a future that required my death to make possible, I made my decision. If Eli Bruft wanted to play the game of murder made to look like accidents, I'd teach him how it was really done. But first, I needed to make sure everyone in town understood exactly what kind of people they were dealing with. I spent 3 days planning the barbecue. To the outside world, it looked like a gesture of community spirit. To me, it was the opening move in a chess game where the stakes were life and death. I invited everyone, neighbors, co-workers, people from the church. Karen attended, but I didn't forget Sheriff Bradley, Dr. Matthews, and even Mrs. Patterson, Jesse's elderly neighbor who'd seen him acting nervous before his death. "This is wonderful," Karen said when I told her about the party. "It'll be good for Eli to socialize. He's been so isolated. That's the idea. I want everyone to meet our house guest." I said it with a smile, but I was thinking about the audio recordings, about Jesse's research, about the pattern of drownings that followed Eli Bancroft like a wake. The day of the barbecue, I grilled burgers and hot dogs while neighbors arrived with side dishes and curiosity. Eli played the part of the grieving widower perfectly, accepting condolences with just the right amount of brave vulnerability. "Nolan's been so generous, letting me stay in the guest house," he told Mrs. Patterson. I don't know what I would have done without him and Karen. It's what neighbors do, I said, flipping burgers. We look out for each other. But I was watching faces, cataloging reactions. Who knew about the affair? Who suspected? Mrs. Patterson kept glancing between Karen and Eli with a puzzled expression. Sheriff Bradley watched Eli with the careful attention of a cop who'd seen too many charming sociopaths. After everyone had eaten, I brought out my laptop and a portable speaker. I wanted to share something with you all, I announced. I've been going through Jesse's things, and I found some video he took of the lake. Thought you might like to see it. The first video was innocent enough. Jesse filming the sunset over Lake Superior, talking about the beauty of the area. People smiled and made appreciative comments. The second video was different. Jesse's voice tense with discovery. This is what I've been seeing at the Bancroft house. Every time Nolan's away, she's here. The footage of Karen leaving Eli's house played on the laptop screen. The yard went dead silent. 23 people watched my wife's affair unfold in high definition. Karen went white as old bone. Eli started to say something, but I held up my hand. There's more, I said. Jesse's voice continued. I confronted them today. Asked them to explain. Want to hear what they said. I played the audio recording from my surveillance system. Eli and Karen's pillow talk about Jesse being a problem that needed to be eliminated, their discussion of his death as a choice they'd made together. Someone gasped. Mrs. Patterson's hand flew to her mouth. Sheriff Bradley was already reaching for his phone. You son of a witch, Eli said, lunging at me. I was ready for him. I stepped aside, and he stumbled into the picnic table. When he came up swinging, I let him throw the first punch. It caught me on the jaw, but I'd taken worse hits from pipe wrenches. My return punch put him on the ground. He attacked me, I said to the crowd, tasting blood in my mouth. You all saw it. Sheriff Bradley was already calling for backup. Neighbors were backing away from Eli like he was radioactive. Karen was crying, but no one was comforting her anymore. This is all lies, she said. Jesse was unstable. Everyone knew it. He was obsessed with me, and when I rejected him, he made up these stories. But the evidence was overwhelming, and the community had heard it with their own ears. By the time the paramedics arrived to check my jaw, half the town knew that Karen Fay and Eli Braftoft were murderers. The other half would know by morning. As the police led Eli away for questioning, he looked back at me with pure hatred. This isn't over, he said. Yes, I replied. It is. But I was wrong. The game was just beginning. 3 days after the barbecue, Eli was released on bail. Insufficient evidence. The prosecutor said the audio recordings were inadmissible because I'd obtained them through illegal surveillance. Jesse's research created suspicion, but not proof. Eli's lawyer argued that grieving people often said things they didn't mean. But the court of public opinion was less forgiving. Eli's architectural firm lost 3 major contracts. The grocery store clerks gave him cold stares. Children were told not to go near the Bancroft house. Karen filed for legal separation and moved in with her sister in Grand Rapids. She hired a lawyer who specialized in domestic disputes and claimed I'd been abusive throughout our marriage. The restraining order came 2 days later. I couldn't go within 500 feet of her, but I could still watch my house. Eli moved back into the main house the day after Karen left. He had the locks changed and installed a security system. He thought he was safe. On Thursday morning, I was in town getting coffee when Dr. Matthews approached me at Murphy's Diner. Nolan, can I talk to you privately? We took a corner booth. Dr. Matthews looked like he'd aged 10 years since the barbecue. I need to tell you something about Jesse's death, something that's been eating at me. I'm listening. The toxicology report showed traces of diazepam in Jesse's blood, Valium. But Jesse wasn't prescribed any anxiety medication. Where would he have gotten it? That's the thing. I prescribed Valium to Sarah Bancroft during her cancer treatment. High-dose tablets for severe anxiety. After she died, Eli returned a nearly full bottle to my office. Said he didn't want the temptation around. The pieces clicked together. But you think he kept some? I think he gave Jesse a spiked drink before he went swimming, just enough to impair his judgment and motor skills, make an accident more likely. Why are you telling me this now? Dr. Matthews stared into his coffee cup. Because I saw the same pattern with Sarah. She was a strong woman, fighting the cancer with everything she had. Then suddenly she became despondent, started talking about giving up. Eli said she was taking extra Valium for anxiety, but I never prescribed increased dosages. You think he was drugging his own wife? I think he was tired of playing nursemaid. Sarah's life insurance was substantial, and her medical bills were eating into it. From a purely financial standpoint, her death was convenient. I left the diner with a new understanding of what I was dealing with. Eli Bancroft wasn't just an adulterer. He was a killer who specialized in making murders look like suicides and accidents. But if he wanted to play games with medication and staged accidents, I had some experience with both. That evening, I called Eli from a burner phone. We need to talk, I said. Meet me at the North Dock. Midnight. I'm not meeting you anywhere. You're crazy. Jesse's not the only one who made insurance recordings. I've got video of you and Karen that never made it to the barbecue. Video that shows exactly how you killed Jesse. You wanted to disappear? Meet me at the dock. He hung up, but I knew he'd come. Men like Eli couldn't resist the chance to clean up loose ends. I was waiting in the shadows when his Subaru pulled up to the dock. He got out slowly, looking around nervously. In his right hand, he carried something that gleamed in the moonlight, a wrench from my own shed. Where's the video? He called out. I stepped into the light. Safe place. Along with copies of Dr. Matthews's toxicology report and Sarah's medical records. You don't have anything. You're fishing. Am I? Tell me, Eli, how many wives have you buried? How many convenient accidents have followed you around? He moved closer, the wrench held low but ready. You're going to have an accident too. Grieving husband, driven mad by his wife's betrayal, drowns himself in the same lake where his best friend died. Very poetic. Except I'm not Jesse, and I'm not alone. Sheriff Bradley stepped out of the shadows behind Eli, his service weapon drawn. Drop the wrench, Eli. Eli spun around, startled. The wrench clattered to the dock. This is entrapment, he said. No, Bradley replied. This is justice. We found Sarah's medical records in your house. The real ones, not the ones you showed the insurance company. Turns out she was getting better, not worse. Her oncologist was talking about remission. I watched Eli's face crumble as his perfectly planned life fell apart. Dr. Matthews also had some interesting things to say about Jesse's toxicology report, Bradley continued, and about the Valium that went missing from his office. Eli looked at me with pure hatred. You think you've won? Karen will never come back to you. She loves me. Karen can make her own choices, I said, but she'll make them knowing what you really are. As Bradley cuffed Eli, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. Not happiness, not satisfaction, but the simple peace that comes from balancing an equation that had been badly skewed. Jesse's death was finally going to be investigated properly. Eli would face trial for multiple murders, and I could start rebuilding a life that didn't revolve around revenge. But first, I had one more piece of business to finish. Karen's sister lived in a duplex on the outskirts of Grand Rapids. I parked across the street and waited. The restraining order meant I couldn't approach her, but I could watch and wait. At 3:47 p.m., Karen emerged from the duplex wearing yoga pants and a Michigan State sweatshirt. She looked older, beaten down by the weight of public exposure. Her auburn hair had lost its shine, and she moved with the careful steps of someone expecting attack. I followed her to a coffee shop downtown, staying well beyond the legal distance the restraining order required. She sat alone at a corner table, staring at her phone with the intensity of someone refreshing news articles about her own scandal. That's when I made my move. Not to approach her, but to ensure she got the package I'd prepared. I'd hired a process server, a professional who specialized in delivering legal documents and other sensitive materials. For $200, he would deliver an envelope to Karen Fee at exactly 4:15 p.m. in the Grind coffee shop. I watched from across the street as the server approached her table and handed her the manila envelope. She looked around nervously, as if expecting me to materialize from thin air, then opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a single photograph and a letter. The photograph showed Karen and Jesse together at the Millfield Summer Festival 2 months before his death. They were holding hands behind the craft beer tent, looking at each other with obvious intimacy. Jesse's arm was around her waist. Her head was on his shoulder. The photo had been taken by Katie Morrison, the 8-year-old neighbor who told me about Karen's nighttime visits to the guest house. Katie had been playing with a disposable camera at the festival and had captured the moment without understanding its significance. The letter was brief. Karen, Eli wasn't your first affair. Jesse wasn't your victim. He was your lover first. And Eli was the tool you used to eliminate him when he threatened to tell me the truth. Dr. Matthews found Jesse's deleted text messages on his phone. Messages to you begging you to leave me and run away with him. Messages where you told him it was impossible because I'd never give you a divorce that left you with half of everything. You didn't just cheat on me with Eli. You orchestrated Jesse's murder because he was going to expose your affair and ruin your long-term financial plans. Eli was your weapon, not your lover. The police have the phone records now. They know you called Eli 3 times the night before Jesse died. They know you told Jesse to meet you at the lake for a final goodbye before you ended the affair. You set him up to die. I loved you for 12 years. Jesse loved you for God knows how long. We both deserved better than being chess pieces in your game. You'll never see a dime of my money. You'll never set foot in my house again. And everyone in Millfield will know exactly what you are. Don't contact me again. Nolan. Through the coffee shop window, I watched her read the letter 3 times. Her face went through a progression of emotions: confusion, recognition, denial, and finally devastation. She crumpled the letter in her fist, then smoothed it out and read it again. When she looked up, tears were streaming down her cheeks, and for the first time since this all started, they looked genuine. That evening, she violated the restraining order. I was in the shed reviewing the surveillance footage one final time before turning it over to the police when I heard her car in the driveway. Through the window, I watched her walk to the front door with the defeated posture of someone who'd run out of options. She knocked softly, then used her key. I heard her moving through the house, calling my name. "I'm in the shed," I called back. She appeared in the doorway, and I barely recognized her. The confident, manipulative woman who'd lied so smoothly about Eli's shoes was gone. In her place stood someone hollowed out by exposure and consequences. "The restraining order," I started. "I don't care about the restraining order. I need to talk to you." "There's nothing to talk about." "There is, because you're wrong about Jesse." I turned off the laptop and faced her. "How am I wrong? I did love him. I loved him before I ever met Eli. Jesse and it started 3 years ago. Before Sarah got sick. Before any of this. And that's supposed to make me feel better? It's supposed to make you understand that I never wanted him dead. Eli killed Jesse because Jesse was going to tell you about us." "Yes. But I never asked him to. I never wanted that." I studied her face, looking for the lies. For once, I couldn't find any. "Jesse wanted me to leave you," she continued. "He said we could start over somewhere new, but I couldn't. This house, our life, the security, I wasn't ready to give it up. So you chose Eli instead." I chose what seemed like the easier path. Eli was grieving, alone, wealthy. He seemed like a solution to all my problems. I thought Jesse would understand and move on, but he didn't. He threatened to tell you everything if I didn't choose him over Eli. He said he had proof of the affair and was going to show you unless I left with him. So you told Eli. I told Eli that Jesse was unstable and making threats. I thought Eli would just, I don't know, reason with him. Maybe offer him money to keep quiet. But Eli had a more permanent solution. Tears started flowing again. I never wanted Jesse dead, Nolan. You have to believe that. It doesn't matter what I believe. It matters what the police can prove. They couldn't prove I knew what Eli was planning. They could prove I had an affair, but not conspiracy to commit murder. She was right, and we both knew it. Karen would face social exile and financial ruin, but she probably wouldn't face criminal charges. Eli had been careful to keep his murder plans to himself. What do you want from me, Karen? Forgiveness, I guess. Or at least understanding. I looked at this woman I'd been married to for 12 years, this stranger who had systematically destroyed everything I'd cared about, and felt nothing but empty exhaustion. I can't give you either, I said. I can give you a divorce that leaves you with whatever the law requires, and nothing more. I can give you the promise that I'll never speak to you again after this conversation. That's all I have left. She nodded, accepting the verdict. As she turned to leave, she stopped. For what it's worth, Nolan, you were a good husband. Better than I deserved. Yeah, I said. I was. After she left, I sat in the shed for a long time, thinking about the wreckage of 3 lives. Jesse, dead because he'd loved the wrong woman. Eli, facing life in prison because he'd chosen murder over morality. Karen, destroyed by her own greed and cowardice. And me, alone in a house that no longer felt like home, wondering what came next. The memorial service for Jesse Hartwell was my idea. The first one had been private, family only, before anyone knew the truth about his death. This one would be public. This one would be justice. I rented the Millfield Community Center and invited everyone who'd ever known Jesse. His family, his co-workers, his neighbors, the guys he played poker with on Thursday nights. Sheriff Bradley came, Dr. Matthews came, and most of the people who'd been at my barbecue came. Karen didn't come. Eli couldn't. He was in county lockup awaiting trial. I'd spent weeks preparing. Jesse's life deserved more than a cover-up and a quiet burial. He deserved the truth, told loudly and clearly to everyone who'd known him. Jesse Hartwell was murdered, I said, standing at the podium in front of 150 people. Not in a random act of violence, not in a crime of passion, but as the result of a calculated decision by people he trusted. I played the footage Jesse had recorded of Karen and Eli's affair. I read excerpts from his text messages to Karen, messages begging her to leave me and start a new life with him. I showed the toxicology report proving he'd been drugged before his death. Jesse died because he loved the wrong woman and trusted the wrong man. But he also died because he tried to do the right thing. He tried to tell the truth, and the truth got him killed. In the audience, I watched faces process the information. Jesse's mother wept openly. His father sat stone-faced, jaw clenched with rage. His brother stood up and walked out, unable to hear any more. But I wasn't finished. Eli Braftoft is facing trial for Jesse's murder. But that's not enough, because Eli didn't act alone. He had help from someone who knew Jesse better than anyone. Someone who used that knowledge to set him up for death. I played the audio recording of Karen and Eli discussing Jesse as a problem that needed to be eliminated. The community center was dead silent except for the sound of the recording and quiet sobbing from the audience. Karen Fay may not face criminal charges for her role in Jesse's death, but she should face something, the judgment of people who knew and loved Jesse. The consequence of being exposed for what she really is. When the service ended, people didn't leave immediately. They stood around in small groups, processing what they'd heard, sharing their own memories of Jesse, their own suspicions about the circumstances of his death. Mrs. Patterson approached me as I was packing up the audio equipment. "I saw her the night before Jesse died," she said quietly. "Karen, she was parked across from Jesse's house around midnight, talking on her phone. She looked agitated. I thought she was having car trouble. Did you tell the police?" "I will now." Others came forward with similar observations. Karen arguing with Jesse outside the post office. Eli asking questions about Jesse's swimming habits at the hardware store. Small details that hadn't seemed significant at the time, but now formed a clear pattern of premeditation. I was loading the last of the equipment into my truck when Jesse's father, Bill Hartwell, approached me. He was a tough old man who'd worked construction for 40 years, and his eyes were red with grief and rage. "Thank you for this," he said. "Jesse deserved better than being forgotten. He was my best friend. I know he was. And I know this cost you everything. Your marriage, your peace of mind, probably your faith in people. It was worth it." Bill nodded, studying my face. "What are you going to do now?" It was a good question. My marriage was over. My house felt like a crime scene. My job on the rig was a temporary escape, but I couldn't run away forever. "I'm thinking about moving," I said. "Maybe buying some land up north, starting fresh." Jesse's grandfather left him 40 acres on the Manistee River. Good fishing, decent hunting. I'm the executor of his estate, and I know Jesse would want you to have it. The offer caught me off guard. "Bill, I can't accept." "You can, and you will. Jesse would have left it to you anyway if he'd made a will. Consider it payment for the truth." That night, I sat on my back deck with a beer, looking out at the guest house where Eli had lived and planned murder. Tomorrow, I'd start making arrangements to sell the house. I'd take the insurance money from my dissolved marriage and buy Jesse's land, build a simple cabin, start over. But first, I had one more piece of business to finish. The call came at 6 a.m. on a Tuesday. Sheriff Bradley's voice was tight with excitement. "We got him, Nolan. Eli's confessing to everything." I was already awake. Sleep came hard these days. What happened? His lawyer advised him to take a plea deal, 25 to life instead of the death penalty. But here's the interesting part. He's claiming Karen was the mastermind. I felt a cold satisfaction settle in my chest. What's he saying? That she manipulated him into killing Jesse. That she told him Jesse was unstable and dangerous. That Jesse had threatened to hurt her if she didn't leave. He says she convinced him that Jesse's death would be a mercy to everyone involved. Can he prove any of that? He's got text messages. Apparently, Karen was too smart to plan murder over the phone, but too stupid to realize deleted texts can be recovered with the right equipment. The prosecution team found dozens of messages between Karen and Eli spanning the weeks before Jesse's death. Messages where Karen described Jesse as obsessed and increasingly violent. Messages where she suggested that something permanent needed to be done about the Jesse situation. Most damning were the messages from the day before Jesse died. Karen had texted Eli, "He wants to meet at the lake tonight. Says it's his last attempt to convince me to leave Nolan. This might be our chance." Eli's response, "I'll take care of it. Trust me." Karen's final message, "Make it look like an accident, and make sure he suffers a little first." The prosecution offered Karen a deal, testify against Eli in exchange for a reduced charge of conspiracy to commit manslaughter instead of first-degree murder. She took it, but the deal required her to allocute, to stand in court and admit exactly what she'd done. I was in the courtroom the day she testified. She looked smaller somehow, diminished by months of legal proceedings and social exile. When she took the stand, her voice was barely above a whisper. "I told Eli that Jesse was dangerous," she said, reading from a prepared statement. "I told him that Jesse had threatened to hurt me if I didn't leave my husband. I knew that Eli was unstable from his wife's death, and I knew that he might take drastic action based on what I told him." "Did you intend for Mr. Braftoft to eliminate Jesse Hartwell?" the prosecutor asked. A long pause. "I intended for the problem to go away. I didn't care how that happened." "Did you send Mr. Braftoft text messages encouraging him to take permanent action against Mr. Hartwell?" "Yes." "Did you tell Mr. Braftoft to make it look like an accident and to make sure he suffers?" Another pause. "Yes." When she stepped down from the witness stand, she looked directly at me for the first time in months. I saw no remorse in her eyes, only resentment. She was sorry she'd been caught, not sorry for what she'd done. The judge sentenced her to 12 years in prison. Eli got life without parole. After the sentencing, I walked out of the courthouse into bright October sunlight and felt something I hadn't experienced since this whole nightmare began: closure. That evening, I returned to my house one last time. The moving truck would come tomorrow, and the new owners would take possession next week. I walked through the empty rooms, remembering the life I'd built here, the trust I'd invested, the love I'd wasted. In the master bedroom, I stood looking out the window at the guest house. Someone else would live there soon, probably unaware of the planning and betrayal that had taken place within its walls. I had one last task to complete. From my jacket pocket, I pulled out a framed photograph. It had been taken at Jesse's wedding 5 years ago. Me, Jesse, and Karen, arms around each other's shoulders, smiling like we believed we'd be friends forever. I took out a pair of scissors and carefully cut Karen out of the picture. Her image went into the trash. The remaining photo, just me and Jesse, went into my shirt pocket. That was how I wanted to remember us. Two friends before betrayal and murder changed everything. The house sold for $30,000 over asking price to a young couple from Detroit who wanted to escape city life. They seemed nice enough and didn't ask too many questions about why I was selling so quickly. The closing was scheduled for the same day Karen was scheduled to be released on bail pending her appeal. I timed it that way on purpose. I was loading the last of my belongings into my truck when her Honda pulled into the driveway. She got out slowly, looking around at the house like she was seeing it for the first time, or the last time. "You sold it," she said. "I told you I would. I thought maybe you'd change your mind. This was our home. This was the place where you planned my best friend's murder. I couldn't sleep here anymore." She walked to the front door and tried her key. It didn't work. I'd had the locks changed months ago. The new owners would get fresh keys at closing. "I need to get some things," she said. "Your stuff is in storage. Unit 47 at Store It on Highway 9. You've got a year to claim it before they auction it off." "Nolan, please. Can we talk about this like adults?" I stopped loading boxes and looked at her, really looked at her. The woman who'd shared my bed for 12 years, who'd promised to love me in sickness and health, who'd systematically destroyed everything I'd cared about. "Adults don't murder their friends," I said. "Adults don't manipulate grieving widowers into committing crimes. Adults don't lie under oath and then ask for forgiveness when they get caught." I was desperate. Jesse was going to ruin everything. Jesse was going to tell the truth. That's not the same thing. You don't understand what it's like to be trapped in a life that's slowly suffocating you. You were gone 3 weeks out of every month, leaving me alone in this house with nothing but my thoughts and my regrets. So, you decided to have affairs instead of asking for a divorce. I was going to ask for a divorce after I figured out how to get half of everything without destroying both our lives, by killing Jesse and framing Eli, by solving the problem with minimal damage to everyone involved. The casual way she said, "solving the problem," made my blood run cold. Jesse hadn't been a person to her. He'd been a problem requiring a permanent solution. "I told Jesse you were a slow leak," I said, closing the tailgate of my truck. "Dangerous because you caused damage gradually, so people didn't notice until it was too late." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means everyone knows what you are now, Karen. The whole town watched you testify under oath that you manipulated a grieving man into committing murder. Your family knows. Your co-workers know. Everyone who ever trusted you knows exactly what you're capable of." She started to cry then, but they were angry tears, not sad ones. "You destroyed my life." "No, you destroyed your life. I just made sure everyone could see the wreckage." I got in the truck and started the engine. Through the windshield, I could see her standing in the driveway, suitcase in hand, looking lost and alone. The neighbors were watching from their windows. Mrs. Patterson, the Morrisons, the Kowalskis, people who'd known Karen for years, who'd considered her a friend, who now crossed the street when they saw her coming. I rolled down the window as I backed out of the driveway. "One more thing," I said. "Jesse's father is suing you for wrongful death. The insurance company is suing you for fraud, and the IRS is auditing your tax returns for the past 5 years, looking for unreported income from Eli. Her face went white. "You can't do that." "I didn't do anything. I just made sure the right people knew the right information. The consequences are all yours." As I drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror one last time. Karen was still standing in the driveway, watching my truck disappear down Birch Street. Around her, neighbors' curtains twitched as people watched the final act of her downfall. I felt no satisfaction, no joy, no sense of victory. Just the quiet peace that comes from balancing an equation that had been badly skewed. Justice, it turned out, was a lot like precision engineering. You identified the problem, calculated the solution, and applied exactly the right amount of pressure in exactly the right place. Everything else was just noise. The 40 acres on the Manistee River were everything Jesse's grandfather had promised. Dense woods, clear water, and silence so complete you could hear your own heartbeat. I spent the winter building a cabin with my own hands, using skills I'd learned from 20 years of offshore construction. The work was good for me, physical labor that left me too tired to think, too exhausted to dream. By spring, I had a simple but solid home, 2 bedrooms, a stone fireplace, a kitchen that looked out over the river. I kept one bedroom for myself and turned the other into a workshop. No television, no internet, just books and tools and the sound of running water. The isolation was exactly what I needed. On the anniversary of Jesse's death, I drove back to Millfield for the first time in 8 months. The town looked the same, but I felt like a stranger walking through it. I stopped at Jesse's grave first, leaving a bottle of beer and a fishing lure on his headstone. "Got him," I said quietly. "Both of them, just like I promised." From the cemetery, I drove past my old house. The new owners had painted it blue instead of white and planted a vegetable garden where Karen's flower beds used to be. The guest house looked smaller somehow, like it was shrinking back into the landscape. I didn't stop. There was nothing there for me anymore. At Murphy's Diner, I ran into Sheriff Bradley. He was 3 years older and looked 10 years wearier, the way cops do when they've seen too much human nature. "I heard you bought Jesse's land," he said, sliding into the booth across from me. "Seemed like the right thing to do. How's the hermit life treating you?" "Can't complain." "How's the investigation business?" "Quieter since Eli and Karen got sentenced." Amazing how much drama those two caused in such a short time. "Any word on Karen's appeal?" "Denied. She'll do the full 12 years, probably more if she doesn't behave herself in prison. Eli's not even bothering to appeal. His lawyer says he's accepted that he'll die in prison." We sat in comfortable silence for a while. Finally, Bradley spoke again. "You know, there were times during the investigation when I wondered if you'd take justice into your own hands. Couple of nights I even drove by your place just to make sure you weren't planning anything stupid." "Like what?" "Like the kind of accident that might befall a murderous architect. Guy like you, with your skills and your access to equipment, could make someone disappear pretty easily." I met his eyes across the table, but I didn't respond. "No, you didn't. You let the system work even when it was slow and imperfect. That took discipline. Or maybe I just wanted them to live with the consequences instead of dying and escaping them. Maybe. Either way, you did the right thing." After lunch, I walked through downtown Millfield one last time, past the bank where Jesse had kept his safety deposit box, past the electronics store where I bought surveillance equipment, past the church where Karen used to pretend to be a good Christian wife. At the edge of town, I stopped at the overlook that gave the best view of Lake Superior. The water was calm that day, reflecting the sky like a mirror. It was beautiful and treacherous, the kind of place where accidents happened to people who weren't careful or to people who trusted the wrong person. I pulled out the photograph I'd salvaged from the wreckage of my old life. Me and Jesse, arms around each other's shoulders, both of us young enough to believe that friendship and loyalty meant something. In the picture, there was a blank space where Karen had been. The empty spot looked natural now, like it had always been meant for just the two of us. I put the photo back in my wallet and drove home to the river, to the cabin I'd built with my own hands, to the silence that had become my sanctuary. Behind me, The town of Millfield grew smaller in my rearview mirror until it disappeared entirely, swallowed by the Michigan woods like it had never existed at all. Some stories end with redemption. Some end with forgiveness. Some end with new beginnings and second chances. This one ended with justice, pure and simple, cold as lake water, sharp as a blade, final as a closed door. It was enough.